Well, good morning, everybody. Morning.
Morning.
Now, some of you, I'm Jude Kelly, the Artistic Director of the Southbank Centre and the convener of WOW, Women of the World Festival. And on my right,
That deserves a round of applause, surely.
Thank you. And on my right, we have the ever ebullient Shami Chakrabarti, and then here we have Baroness Helena Kennedy, QC. And I'm just going to introduce them appropriately in 1 second. But before I say that, some of you have been here Friday and Saturday, some of you have only come today, some of you were here, etc., etc., etc. And so just some rules of engagement, which is that there's plenty to do, plenty to see. We're completely sold out today. That's 1,100 people have come today. I know, how great is that, hey? Yes, wow rocks. But you know that means that on the multiple choices that you can go to, are you going to Archers, or are you going to African feminism, or are you going to do pornography, or are you going to do Jenny Murray? You can't get into everything, obviously. So if you can't get into your first choice, go to your second choice with joy. And find out something about things you didn't know you wanted to know about. Because every woman speaking on the panel, and there are a few men as well, they've all got great things to say and great stories to tell. So this first session this morning, Women, Power and Change, and it's quite a short session, and to be frank, I just really gave it partly it's an opportunity so that Helena and Shami, two of my idols, could just sit here and have breakfast with me. But in a way, the title came from the fact that two things happened in the last couple of months. First of all, Women's Hour did this long, who are women in power in the UK, and Helena was an advisor, I think Shami was, I was. Anyway, it was like women in power, what's that about? And then the Fawcett Society published Women, Power and Change a few weeks ago with various overall conclusions. The country, this was their conclusion basically, the country is still run by men, despite women making up 51% of the population, which we know about. Is it getting worse? We're 60th equal out of 109 countries, as opposed to 31st in 2001. And then there's an enormous list of statistics, a report worth getting, about where power rests. But the point of this session, I'm going to turn to Helena first. By the way, who is barrister and broadcaster, a member of the House of Lords.
National treasure.
National treasure, exactly. Current chair of Justice, the British arm of the International Commission of Jurists. So she has an incredible history in the whole territory of human rights. She's co-chair of the International Bar Association's Institute of Human Rights, and she's principal of Mansfield College in Oxford. I'm just going to turn to her and ask her why this word power produces such ambivalence in people, and particularly in women. Because is it because power corrupts, if you got it at all, and power, absolute power, corrupts absolutely? What is it about this word power that I think we struggle with?
Well, I had an interesting conversation with Jenny Murray, who of course had been doing the programs around, women in power and then creating a power list. And one of the things that she was saying was that women, almost every woman that she interviewed, shied away from an acceptance that they were a woman who had power. And I think it's still an underlying thing that power is something that is wielded in unattractive and oppressive ways, rather than that it can be a source for change and can be used in positive ways. And so it's become one of those words that we feel has been so appropriated by maleness and a particular kind of maleness, and used to purposes that are not good, that women shy away from it. And so I don't think it's surprising that as women that we don't feel comfortable with it as a word. I have a sort of, I too, I think that it's something that we have to kind of engage with, because I don't think you get anywhere unless you have power. But I think there are real problems about power. And it's one of the reasons why people like Shami and myself get involved in taking the government to task when we see abuses of power. And most of my work in the courts is about abuse of power, either in individual relationships or in the relationship between the state and the individual. And so you have to keep, once people have power, what we know is that power corrupts. And, that there's a great quote, which is that it can make a Nero out of even decent men. And of course, they were talking about the fact that it's mostly men that wield power, but Nero was a pretty nasty dictator. And the problem is that once people have power, it's very easy and very tempting and seductive to start using it in ways that are that you decide are for the good, but which are usually not. And so that's why you have to all the way around have them constraints put on power. And one of the things that I think is a problem for us nowadays, and it's one of the reasons why the power list became something of a talking point about whether it really was about power or whether we don't really understand as women what power is that power, to me, increasingly exists in places where you don't see it. And we're not there. And you see, one of the reasons why people everywhere are so dissatisfied with politics and politicians is that by and large, it's not happening where politics is anymore. It's happening at a level above that because globalization has created a kind of platform of power that operates above the nation state. And because of that, it's the corporate world. It's the world of international banking. That's where real power. It's Murdoch who has power. It is the people who are the brokers of that kind of international money-making machinery that operates above the nation state. And it's hard to find a woman amongst them. And so that's where real power is in our contemporary world. And so we can talk about, women being the head of this and women being, the head of that, or a minister here, a minister there. The reality is women are not where real power is.
Okay, but before I come to Shami, then let me just press you a bit further on that. Well, is that okay, we find the word difficult because examples of power lead us to examples of corruption of power. Mm-hmm. And then we recognize the fact that we're not at the table where heavyweight power is being exerted. But should we be? I mean, even though power is a toxic thing, should we be saying, well, in that case, we just won't go there? I mean, what is the alternative to having power?
Well, I mean, you see, I've made certain choices in my life which are about having one foot in the establishment and one foot out, because that gives me more power, and my power is also invisible, in some ways, but by being somebody who is constantly calling to account and pointing out abuses of power gives me a certain power, and for me the importance of that is that I have to have credibility with you, with all of, that I've spent my life being an advocate. And I use that advocacy not just in the courts, but outside of the courts. And one of the things is that I feel is that we make the mistake of, yes, we want women to be judges and we want women to be in positions in government. And good things can happen as a result of that. But you still need to have the voices of people saying where the shortcomings are, where power is being abused. And women too can abuse power once they get it because they start performing in the ways in which power dictates behaviours. So I think that we have to be much more realistic that the way that we can, for still a long time to come, be exerting power is by calling to account those who are abusing it.
Okay, well, that is a very important role for women and men who want society to be ethical. Mm-hmm. But it still doesn't answer the question about whether women should take the risk of becoming prime ministers or becoming CEOs of corporations, etc. I mean, I don't know whether you're saying that women should try to resist absolute power in all those spaces because they will just become toxic as well.
I still believe that it is possible to be an ethical, principled person in an overt position of power. I think it's very difficult to do that. And I think it means that you have to be comfortable and have enough confidence to have opponents and critics and people who tell you where your shortcomings are. And the problem is that when people become prime ministers, become secretaries of state, they don't want to hear those criticisms and they resent that criticism. And so that's one of the problems about and so you then make your circle smaller and smaller and smaller, and you make it a circle that is saying the things that you want to hear. but I do believe that it must be possible to hold power, but to do it in a principled way. I mean, it was one of the reasons why one liked watching West Wing, was that we saw this guy agonizing over how to behave in a proper way.
And now we've got Borgen, which is even better, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so we believe it's possible, and we've got to continue believing it's possible.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we know the risks attached to it.
Okay, so now I'm going to turn to Shami. And again, really no introduction, but she's also a barrister by background. And since becoming Liberty's director, she's become really a world star as a broadcaster and even appeared in the Olympics carrying the flag. Quite right, yes. She's Chancellor of Oxford Brookes University, and she's Governor of the British Film Institute, and she's a visiting fellow of Nuffield College, Oxford.
And stop. And that's enough.
Etc. That's enough to be going on with. So let's just go back to this idea of if the corridors of power, visible or invisible, are not walked mainly by women, is this not a problem for the issues and causes and interests that women need to have served?
Yes, it is. But first of all, happy Mother's Day, everybody. And I can't think of a better way to begin it than with these two, who do actually have quite a lot of power and use it really well, and in particular by encouraging other women. I've been hugely encouraged by both of them, so you don't have to abuse your power, and they are kind of living examples of that. I've got a little Mother's Day present for each of you. And these are pants from Who Made Your Pants? And they're in suffragette colours.
Are they big enough for me? I wear big knickers now.
In the metaphorical sense, you have big knickers. That's it.
Oh, thank you. Whoa.
Ooh, oh, you are lovely.
Suffragette pants from Who Made Your Pants? So, okay, back to the power question. Look, of course, women need to be in the corridors of power, but I agree with you about the discomfort with the word, because power corrupts, because power is abused, because of all the things that Helena said. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I have seen, not just in the two of you, but in other great women that I've had the privilege to work with in the world of law and human rights, how people can keep their integrity, can keep in touch with reality, still be the grit in the oyster. For example, I'm going to just briefly tell you about two great women who've done great things today in holding power to account. If you bought The Observer today, or if you buy it or go and look online, you'll see that on the front page. Actually, it's a beautiful front page, because on one side you see that Britain's lost faith in Osborne's austerity plan. Yeah, just a little bit. But on the right hand of the page, you read about my dear friend and learning friend, Dinah Rose QC, who has resigned from the Liberal Democrats because they sold out on secret courts, and she's done that.
Great.
And she didn't have to do that. She could have kept her head down and just gone on with it. She's a very, very eminent practitioner, potential judge. It's not easy to rock the boat like that. She's at the heart of the legal establishment and the establishment in this country, and she's done that because she hasn't sold out and because she stayed in touch with her pals and her values. And a few minutes ago from the... I'm not a party political person, by the way. That's not the point I'm making. I've got friends across the spectrum. It's about using your power well and not selling out. A few minutes ago at the Lib Dem Spring Conference in Brighton, a less famous younger woman, also a lawyer and an activist called Jo Shaw, has resigned from the platform over the same issue, her opposition to secret courts. So... the answer is yes, women should take power and they can use it, and they can work together and use it really well.
Great.
I was on the television the other day on their politics show, and a question came up about a row that's going on in Grantham about whether to build a statue to Margaret Thatcher or not. And I was asked, and I said, well, actually, as a woman, to be able to celebrate a woman Prime Minister, our only female woman Prime Minister, seems to me to be very important, whether or not you agree with statues at all. But just that fact that women being prominent in the whole world, even if the whole world is not fully ethical, and even if you don't agree with what they do with their power. This is the dilemma I'm talking about. Right? You can remain ethical by not having power, or you can take the risk and step into the kind of potentially very difficult space. And yesterday, talking to Naomi Wolf, when we weren't talking about sex, which we were mainly talking about, her book Fire on Fire, which she wrote nearly 12 years ago now, really challenges the idea that when women are in a situation where they have some level of stability in their lives, i.e. they are not being violated, they are not refugees, they're not under absolute pressure to live, and they have levels of financial independence, should they at that point come forward and try to deliberately claim more space in civil society? And I wonder whether we are still in a way sort of denying the fact that we're ready to take power. That's, I suppose, my point. You know, how do you think that women are, in this country, are dealing with the fact that we've been talking about many of these issues, we know that there's everything to play for. Are we coming forward in the right way?
Goodness. We were having a chat yesterday with the blokes. Do you remember?
I do.
And,
it was only yesterday, yeah.
And with John Snow.
John Snow, Michael Kaufman, yeah.
And John made a really important point, I think. He said, there aren't enough women in politics, and yet they're all in the NGOs. And I think that maybe was a kind of interesting take on the dilemma, as you put it, that there are places that feel safer, and then there are places that feel less safe, and frankly, just places that are pretty horrible. I mean, this is why Helena is such an amazing heroine, because she doesn't just operate in civil society and in the relatively safe space of the law with its rules and so on. She goes out, she puts herself out there in politics as well, and without embarrassing her, I know that comes at a cost, and you have to be really brave, and you have to put up with, you know, some personal shit. Yeah, exactly.
You put up with crap, yeah.
And you know, and I'm just not as brave as Helena is the truth. I mean, she's been a huge inspiration to me all my adult life and my professional life. But I know it's a bigger step and a bigger sacrifice to do what Helena's done, and to actually, you know, be in a political party and to do what Dinah and Joe have done today, and to speak against your party and then take the crap that inevitably comes from speaking truth to power. It's very tricky. I always say to younger women, you know, do as I say and not as I do. Get involved in politics, stand for Parliament, take that next step that I've always resisted myself.
And have you resisted it? I mean, we take it as a given that our ethical side goes, well, I don't like the look of that, I don't like that behaviour, I don't approve of the way that the power is being exercised. But is there also, I mean, you're suggesting that there might be a streak of cowardice, I'll just name it, because...
Thanks, Jude. I want the pants back now. No, not really.
I think it's a question I ask, you know, of all of us.
Yeah.
No. I think there's something in this, which is that I do think that one of the things I see about women, for example, in the law, is that we are in those areas that are, as Jon Snow is talking about, you know, the women in the NGOs. Women do choose to go into areas where there actually is much more about human contact, and where you can have play some role in important moments in people's lives. And it's a people stuff rather than commercial law or contract law or that kind of stuff, or land law or whatever. That women choose much more the people stuff. And we all know, and we've read all the books, and we know what that's all about. I just think that we then, as a result of all of that, don't value that stuff. So, for example, just now, here we are, we've just had, the Supreme Court has got 12 senior judges in it. There's been one woman in it for the last 10 years, and she's fabulous and very, very, really, really clever woman. Right? But there are other clever women. And I'm talking about in a totally different league, you know, I mean, we're really talking very smart folk. And they've just appointed 3 new people to the court, that Supreme Court, not a woman amongst them.
And that just stinks. That just completely stinks.
I mean, it's just terrible. And then you ask the guys why that has happened. 23 of the people who are consulted to see who they think should be put in, 23 people, 22 of them are men. And so the guys clone themselves.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about that is they don't think there's anything meritorious or don't value the stuff that women do. They don't see it as having the same value. So when it comes to applying for jobs, those people who've been in the NGOs, what they've spent their life doing is not given the same kind of value. And so there's that skewered thing. I said to my husband this morning, after your conversations, you know, the Jon Snow stuff about, you know, would you go to a male conference? I said to him, would you go to a conference for men, like WOW, you know? He went, no. And I said, why? He said, because I'm always going to men's conferences. And it's true, of course. He's always going to men's conferences. So that's the truth of it. So I actually think that there are ways in which we think, do we really want to go into that world? Do we really want to take that stuff on? And I think there is a way in which many women make choices where they can actually have an impact, but also have a life that has real meaning and value. And I think that there's a way in which that...
Surely, Helena, then we have to do two things, don't we? We need to value that stuff that women are doing. It needs to be paid more, it needs to be valued more, but we also do need to go to the men's conference and bust it up just a little bit.
Absolutely.
We have to do... do you not think? We have to do both.
And you have to stand up, and that's the bit that takes an awful lot of kind of, you know, having to kind of have a deep breath and then say it, is about naming the stuff that's going on. I've just had it at Oxford, where I'm the head of one of the Oxford colleges. And I'm the head of a poor college by choice. I like poor. You know, I've always liked poor. Anyway, and there are these rich colleges. And, there was a moment where I had to go and say, hey, guys, have we ever thought about kind of redistribution of wealth? It was like I had kind of, vomited on the floor or something. There was a kind of shock horror about the very idea of that. And you just sometimes have to beard them in their den about the things that they consider to be norms, but which should not be norms.
Yeah. Well, look, we've got 2 minutes left, and this is the thing I'm still driving at, which is that it is true that where women have huge influence, often that can be undervalued by men and by women.
Yeah.
But it is also true, I think, that if we look to other countries and we say, look how many women are in Parliament there, look how many women CEOs, etc., we can't have it both ways. We either think, well, that's a good thing, in which case, what about us?
I think you can chew and walk at the same time, and I think women are better at that than guys. Sorry for the fellas who are in there. But I think that you can. I don't think there's any problem about having a dual strategy, which is to say, we have to be in there. We have to have more women on boards. We have to have more women in Parliament, in power, in top jobs. Absolutely. We want them there, and we have to insist and be demanding about it. But we also have to support them to be courageous in doing the things that we want seen to be done, which is changing the institutions they go into. Because we have seen women going into them,
but Helena,
in the law and all of that. But
Helena, I agree with you. I agree with Helena.
Thank God you're not a man interrupting.
I know, it's funny, isn't it? It feels weird to... Well, it always feels weird to interrupt Helena, but...
oh, God.
No, I agree with all of that about taking on these institutions and then being brave within them. But the other bit of the chewing and the walking is to value the stuff that women already do. Yep. The stuff that the low-paid work, the caring work, and the nurturing work. The stuff that they just do naturally. That has to be sort of upgraded, and then the power clubs need to be busted up at the same time.
Now, those of you, it's nearly 10:30. You're going off to the next sessions. If you took the word power and you just changed it to influence, just for a second.
Oh, it's much more comfortable then.
Oh, isn't it just?
Oh, I like that.
A much cosier word altogether.
Yes.
But we have had speed mentoring, a lot of speed mentoring on Friday. It's still going on today and tomorrow. I'd like you all to think, well, in the sphere of influence that you have, what would happen if you shifted your sphere of influence? Could you have greater influence? And how much is it that you just don't fancy the next step? And how much is it because actually you fear that you may not be good enough?
Yeah, I want to just mention that. You last year or the year before set up a mentoring thing for women in the arts, and I became one of the mentors. And I'm not an arts person particularly, although I love the arts. And I spent time with these women, and it was unbelievable that they were a group of women who were all number twos in great arts organisations, and they were like the main guy was a guy, of course, and it was like they were their wife. They were the enabler. They made it possible for these guys to be in the number one job. And in fact, if they'd walked away, the men would have had a heart attack. And I actually think there was a thing of saying to them, why are you not putting yourself out to be? And they started saying, maybe it's because being that number one, it's exposing myself in a way to the kind of, to that ultimate risk, which I perhaps am resisting.
Yeah.
And it was having the extra push, and it's we as women can do this for each other, having the extra push to say, you can do this, and you're actually doing it just now, is running the bloody organisation. Get out there and be at the front. And it just is about supporting women to take that extra step, and it's the hard one.
Yeah, and the thing is, it will mean that some women take that step, they become a powerful person, they don't get it right every time, and it's very unfair if they then become the example of, well, women can't hack it, or, you know, you've betrayed us because you've got the ordinary venal sins of other humans.
I think if you get a critical mass going, that is less likely to happen. That happens when you've got the one woman and she sort of sets up to
I know we're running out of time. I do want to just remember us to remember.
Just have a quick word, Helena, why don't you?
Yeah. No, I just want to remember, do you remember that when in government, when Labour was in government, that we had Claire Short and we had Mo Mowlam in the first cabinet? Both of them were subjected to the most incredible, vicious attacks by the media, but also spun against inside their own party. Yeah. There was something vile about all of that, and they actually were brought down by it. And so I think that we have to, even when we see women making mistakes, getting it wrong, perhaps be more forgiving of each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We've got to support... Okay, the heckler on the front row here is saying, you use the power at home as well, because most of those people in power, mostly those men, have women at home or partners at home helping them be there. Okay, so powerful women and men, off you go, multiply. Well, actually don't, because we're sold out. But next session, thank you, Shami and Helena.